I'm Ruhi. I'm usually behind the scenes of this podcast, but we're going front and center for today. And I am joined by two of my lovely dear friends, Kelly and Gigi. And we are just really going to talk about all things sport history, women in sports, women's history in sport, all of the above. So I'm going to hand this over to you both. I really just want to start out with an introduction, who each of you are, what you're doing now, your sport background. I know we've got some athletics in there, some coaching in there, some all of the above in there. So I'll let one of you guys kick it off and we'll get right into it.
Oh, Gigi pointed at me. It's if you guys couldn't hear the point, I think I'm going first. I'm Kelly. I have been around sports my entire life. My parents both were college athletes. They both played basketball in college. I was horrible at basketball growing up, couldn't score, couldn't shoot. So that wasn't in the cards for me, but always loved sports, always knew that's what I wanted to do, whether it was on the field or behind the scenes. So ended up playing soccer and softball in high school, a little bit of basketball, to be fair, but again, not good at it. Ended up getting a scholarship to play at Fordham University, which is how I met Gigi, and played softball there for 5 years. Loved it. Loved every second. My best friends were, besides Ruhi, were on that team. Some of the best years of my life. And through college, I ended up making a lot of good connections in the sports world. Worked for sports radio, again with Gigi, WFUV Sports in the Bronx. So that was kind of my intro into the sports media industry. And from there, ended up getting an internship with NFL Films, which I love because I grew up watching football.
Yep,
I'm a diehard Patriots fan. I know that's a red flag.
Yep,
I know it's a red flag, but I am. And
not for that.
Gotta support women, okay? Gotta support women. But I ended up getting interested in NFL Films, staying there, becoming a PA after school. And through that, actually ended up back where I'm originally from, North Carolina, working for the Panthers. I'm currently the only female videographer and first ever that they've had there. So definitely had like the woman in sports thing going for me since I was a little girl, and
yay, I love that.
So,
and to be fair, you were good at basketball. For everybody listening, she made varsity as soon as she tried out. So we're just going to throw that out there. Gigi, take it away.
And I have more assists than points, so that should tell you something.
Well, I had more fouls than points. So Kelly, you're good. And everybody listening, yeah, Kelly, thank you for that. Ruhi, you're right. Kelly was good at basketball. We played pickup sometimes in college.
No sport she can't do. So
everybody would pass to the rock.
Clearing the name here.
No.
Guys.
Yeah. I think that we're already getting deep on this podcast. We're already like calling out each other's the way we hold ourselves back. So that's good for us. Yeah, for me, I had to let Kelly go first because that's my girl, and she was a grade above me coming in, and I feel like I learned a lot from her, and I continue to. And there's a lot, Kelly, you don't even know this, but there's so much that I feel like I do because of you. Like even today, I was thinking about you because I was like, Kelly would like to do this ahead of time, and normally I wouldn't. So let me do it right now and be a little bit like Kelly. So. For me, same thing. I grew up with an athletic family. I'm one of 6 kids, the youngest, 4 boys, and I'm one of 2 girls. And so for me, it was always just so fun to play sports. I loved it. And that's really where I felt the most, myself. And I was thinking about this the other day, man. I was also the kid that was like the weird, like freak. Like, I don't know if you guys know this. I was the tallest kid in my class till like 6th grade. Biggest feet, like it was kind of embarrassing. So I actually just like felt comfortable with sports, but my dad played football. All my brothers played sports. And then when I got to high school, same thing, not good at basketball, but still played, made varsity. Volleyball I ended up loving, and softball was where my heart was. I grew up an LSU fan, and I just happen to be wearing LSU today. And I wanted to play for Beth Torino. I wanted to go to LSU, but, I had mid-major dreams too. So I ended up at Fordham. I walked on after getting recruited to some D3 and a little bit to Ivy League for a time there, and then realized I don't test well. Anyway, I got to Fordham, loved it, loved playing softball. We won 2 championships while I was there, and then did sports radio, WFUV with Kelly, and I just loved it. I remember my first day at the radio station, it was pretty much only talked about as if guys worked there. And it kind of seemed like only guys worked there. And I'm so happy looking back now because WFEV just had its first student director that was a woman. So it's like Kelly and I left, and then there happened to be a major first. So a lot of transformation while we were there, and it was great to be part of a shifting culture and help shift that. And now I work in sports in so many different capacities. So a lot of sports media, doing play-by-play and analyst work. So I'm around the game a lot. I'm itching to play while I'm there. And then also some sports business too. So I feel like I see a lot in front of the camera and also behind the scenes in the business world that could be helped by women. And some of my best calls or games or whatever is when a woman's either beside me or producing the show. So definitely feeling a lack of female energy. But when it's there, it's the best, to be honest.
There's so many different ways I want to kind of go in all of those points that both of you mentioned, and just your sport background, your family background. Then we've got college, and now we're in that time of our life where we're post-college, which is just even crazy still to think about. But both of you, so starting out, I guess, when you were growing up, both of you talk about having brothers and brothers in sports. How was that for you guys to be the daughters in sports? The point is back.
I'm pointing the other way. I'm pointing at you.
Yeah. Point at me. This is how you know Kelly and I definitely had podcasts together, because we're like, oh, you got this question. We got this question. Yeah, I'll take this one for now. But for me, it was great. Like it was so helpful. And honestly, a lot of what I want to do now is working towards equality for girls and women in sports. And I think it started then, because I was like, hold on, I'm actually really good at sports from a young age. It really came naturally. But I felt, not necessarily in my family, but maybe if people were to ask our family, like extended family, coming in and being like, oh, what are you guys up to? And they would really spend time with my brothers on the sports that they were playing, it felt like. But meanwhile, I was like, wait, I just like gave it my all, and I'm 8. And I'm like, I just like played my heart out yesterday. They don't even know it. And so like, I feel like from a young age too, I felt like still I wanted to advocate for the sport that I was playing. So it was really good, because it gave me a fire. And then also physically it helped, because there was always someone to play catch with. And then once my brother was throwing like too hard for me to want to catch to him, it was like, all right, this isn't helpful anymore, but I could still challenge myself and, try and like still play with him a little bit more. But still to this day, I still talk to them about sports all the time. And my dad is so helpful too, because he played football at BC. He has a really good sports mind. He pretty much only watches sports like exclusively for his life. So it's always good to like bounce things around with him. And it helped me a lot.
I feel like going off of that, like you'd mentioned your dad. You hear the whole girl dad thing after Kobe's passing. I feel like I was lucky in the fact that my dad was like the ultimate girl dad. Like from the age of me being 4, he was like, oh, you're playing with the girls and you're going to be the best player. And like, he was always very supportive, always told me that if I wanted to be a professional athlete, I could be. Like, he was never like, oh, if you want to be a female soccer player, you're not going to make as much money. That was not even, it was always, you know what, you like Mia Hamm, I'm going to buy you a Mia Hamm jersey and I'm going to go take you to the soccer field and we're going to run laps. So I think having a male figure who was so supportive of women's sports, and you guys know my dad, like he loves watching softball. He loves watching girls basketball. Like he enjoys women's sports. And so I think having a male figure like that who was older, and I think a lot of girls might have that same figure in their life who are kind of like, oh, you're a girl, that's not for you. He was on the flip side of that, being like, no, you can do this. Like he was really encouraging me and supporting me in that dream. So I got to give him a shout out as well. I think something that I've learned throughout my career is it's really important for women to support other women. But when you're a marginalized community or when you're in the minority in a setting, it can sometimes also be beneficial to have that support presence from the majority. So yes, women need to support other women, but I think it's also really helpful having men who are going to uplift you in the workspace, who are going to support you on the playing field and are going to respect you as a woman. Because yeah, girl power all day, it's really important. But I think something I learned from having a dad who was so supportive was like, hey, like that really taught me a lot about being strong
and I think
as a girl.
It's so interesting that we're talking about this today, because just earlier in my class, I gave a presentation on women's sports and women in sport media was the topic for our lecture this week. And at the end, my professor, who has just become a girl dad of 2 as of recent, he was talking about how like he's very excited to raise his kids in the sport world, especially near FSU, because FSU women's sports are fantastic across all domains, really. And it just had me thinking about the time I remember distinctly in elementary school. All the boys were playing baseball. They were throwing the baseball around. They brought their gloves to school. Like they brought everything that they needed. And I didn't have any of the equipment. And I was like, okay, I really want to play catch with them. I don't, these are fun times in recess. I'm not the best at soccer. And so my dad took me to Dick's Sporting Goods and got me a baseball glove. And in that, like, I played all the 2 years that I played softball in middle school with you, Kelly, I played with a baseball glove.
Ruhi played 2 years of middle school softball, but to this day, she had and I played D1 softball. She had one of the best catches in outfield I've ever seen. Like I can still picture it perfectly. Like, Gigi, you'll appreciate this as an outfielder, like running back in center field over the shoulder, like over the head, just stuck the glove out. So don't let her play herself down either.
I wish so bad
that was iconic. That shit was iconic.
I swear, if we actually saw it, it would be the most underwhelming catch that I shouldn't have even like done the behind the back Michael Jordan jump for. But hey, I'll take the praise when I can, because varsity was not in my books. I was a little scared of that ball. But I played those 2 years with that baseball glove, all because my dad was like, you want to play with these boys who are throwing the baseball around? Like, sure, you can use a baseball glove. Why not? And I think that support just like echoes into our career moving forward of, yeah, okay, what can't we do? I think that really sets that baseline of what we can achieve, and that there's no area we don't belong in, right? Yeah, I think all of that, what you all were saying, just resonates so deeply. And I think moving forward too, both of you are in softball, or were in softball, high school, college, are still involved in it in some capacity. Women's sport, right? You're surrounded by all of this girlhood, girl energy. How is that on the flip side? So, growing up in a household of brothers and having very, very hands-on supportive fathers in this sport world, to kind of a very female-dominated field.
I would give anything. Everything I have, I would give to be back in a Fordham softball locker room. It wasn't big. It wasn't because of the locker room. It was just because no matter what we were going to do that day, like maybe it was a 6 a.m. lift, we're so tired, middle of the season, or we're going on to go play in a tournament, whatever it is, man, we were having so much fun. I think that's the beauty of sports. Is like, it's such a safe haven to play and to just really have autonomy over your own body. Sure, if you want to like be deep, that's how I think about it. But really on the surface, it's just we're locking in to something bigger than ourselves all together. And everybody is like collectively working towards something that is so infectious. There's like a level of focus that comes with that that's unmatched. And it's so much fun. And it's like, you're being a good teammate, and maybe there's like some petty stuff or whatever, but you get over that. And like, you know how to have fun within yourself, and also how to perform within yourself. And then also like how to spread that energy around the team. And there were times too where it's like Kelly and I felt like I needed Kelly like at practice sometimes too, where I'm like, oh my God, I'm having a terrible day. And then Kelly would be like my girl I'd go to. I'm like, hey Kelly, I'm like not that good today. So like, if you notice, like I'm getting down, if I make an error or something, like, can you get me? No problem. She had me. Like having that support there was so great. And that was college. But I'd also say like being a kid, some of my favorite times and my best relationships were playing just as a young kid. I think I started softball at 8, and like, I loved being out there and playing with everybody. It was so fun. And there's a time there, I think, where you're like all trying to play in college where it's a little not that fun with everybody, but you still have your moments where you're just chopping it up and having a good time. And yeah, I would really give anything to go back to that. And there's so many reasons why it's fun. It's like, you're encouraged to be a badass too. It's like, you're literally flexing sometimes. Like you're just having a really, really good time and seeing each other's strengths. And you're not like, it's not a bad competition. It's really good motivation that I loved. And I would give anything to have that as a daily routine.
Yeah, I feel like a phrase that we're hearing a lot lately with the Barbie movie and everything is girlhood. And when I think of girlhood, like Gigi said, I think of that locker room, and I just think of how supportive everyone is. And no offense to guys, but maybe all offense to guys, like we are a lot more mature and in tune with our emotions. And I think that's super evident with something as high competitive and high stress as like a sports environment, a competitive sports environment. When you're able to compete, to sacrifice, to go through struggle, to overcome challenges and deal with shit together, it's so much more powerful and I think so much more fulfilling than by yourself. And I think that's kind of an advantage you have of being on a team with all girls. Now, there's definitely exceptions, but Gigi and I, like, we were fortunate enough to have an amazing locker room, amazing teammates. And there were so many things, whether it was softball related or completely off the field, that I would never have gone through without those girls to support me. And I think being on a team in general is really about being selfless and being there for people and being a part of something that's bigger than yourself. And I feel like girls more so than guys kind of get that because us as girls in society, we're kind of doing that. Like, it's kind of like, it's like girl code. You got to support your girls because
Right.
we already have shit we're all having to go against, like we already, like, our backs are already against the wall. We got to do this together. And I feel like the locker room is a microcosm of that. And I think it really is truly special. Just like it is, there's that support and that feeling of safety and comfortability and vulnerability that you don't really get anywhere else. And I think you can find that in places outside the locker room. If you're not into sports, I think like even just a close knit friend group. I know, like, for me out of school, like going to the gym and stuff, like one thing Ruhi and I and Gigi, honestly, we all have in common is we love weightlifting. And I feel like having like a strong group of girls around you that understand that is helpful. Like, I just think girls are so good at communicating. And so when you have that common goal, that communication is even more heightened. And I think it's a really special thing.
I think just having, like you said, Kelly, having each other's backs, kind of in a situation where it's like we have no other choice but to, right, have each other's back, because if we don't, then who does at this point? I kind of want to highlight on what both of you actually ended up talking about is the idea that being a part of sport is bigger than ourselves, bigger than the team, your individual player. And I just kind of want to leave it at that. I'm curious on each of your experiences with that, how it shows up. Just hoping to elaborate a bit.
Yeah, I think Gigi is actually a fantastic example of that. She gassed me up earlier, so now I got to gas her up. But I think you guys know I just said I'm a Patriots fan. They have the big saying, "Do your job." Like, that's a Belichick saying, but it's applicable to everything. And I think being on a team, especially like I know softball the best. It's any sport, but with softball, when it's such a big team and you can only have 9 girls on the field at one point, maybe 10 in the full lineup. But we had, I think, Gigi can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think like 16, 17 girls on our team at any point in time. And so there's going to be girls whose roles are different from game to game. Like, not everyone is going to be the starting pitcher. Not everyone is going to be the cleanup batter, but everyone has a role and everyone has to do that job in order to win and to be successful. And I look at Gigi, and she was someone who came in as a walk-on, and she could have very easily, after like year 2, given up or been like, fuck this. Like, I don't care. I'm just going to have a bad attitude. I'm not going to try. But no, she did the exact opposite. She pushed us all in practice. She pushed everyone in practice so hard. She was one of the fastest girls we had. It still probably is faster than most people I know. And she would steal bases during practice. And that led to her being able to be our pinch runner. And that she pinch ran for us in the most clutch situations. Like, we don't win an A10 championship unless Gigi does her role and puts her ego aside, goes hard in practice, supports everyone, and then gets as good as she can at her one role in the team. That's how championships happen, when everyone commits to their role. And I think that's like a big thing. And I think it's something that's a lot easier said than done because, especially, girls, we deal with insecurities. I think all 3 of us can speak to that. Like, there are things that maybe you're less confident in. And I think a challenge with sports is playing time and stats and that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And it's hard not to pin your self-worth on those things. And I think the way around it is to find worth in your role and knowing that what you're doing is bigger than yourself and for the team. And I think the best teammates are the ones who can really embrace that, whether their role is to be the starting shortstop or it is to, be as loud as they freaking can on the bench, whatever it is. Like, I think if you embrace that role, that makes you a better teammate, and that ultimately helps the team. And I think that's really what moves the needle to win a championship.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I feel like sports are so much bigger than yourself. And I feel like that is so freeing too. Like, I think sometimes I would let that overwhelm me and be like, if this team's so good, what am I doing here or something? And I think it takes a lot of work in the college space to be like, okay, I do know my role. Obviously, you always want to play and you want to play as much as possible. But like, I spent a lot of time being the starting player, like the go-to person on different teams I was on. And then I got to Fordham and I knew that wasn't going to be the case to begin with, but like, I couldn't help but do it. Like I would look around and I'm like, I love this team. And then also everybody is a badass. And this is like the coolest culture ever. And you were walking into a culture of everybody's doing their job and everybody is always doing what they can to get better. Like we're constantly like physically working on what we need to do to get better, mentally working on what we need to do to get better. And then also in softball, it's built into be a teammate. You are cheering for each other all the time, which is so adorable. Like that's so cute. And yeah, I love being a good teammate, and that's something I've always prided myself on. I knew wherever I would go, I would be a good teammate. And maybe that's coming from being on teams throughout my whole life, like as a family member or literally as an athlete. But I think that's the sweetest thing. And it's the most infectious thing too, to like be a good teammate. And then you notice when someone's a good teammate and you want to give that same energy back to them. I think that was like a whole circular energy that we had. And then I think the other part of sports being bigger than yourself is it really pushes you to go beyond any bounds that you set for yourself. There's so many days where I was like, what? No way. There's literally no way I could do that. And then somebody would do it and I'm like, okay, it's possible. All right, let me try. Or I would do it and I'd be like, oh, I guess I could do more, whatever it is, lifting, softball. Even now, sometimes I'm like challenging myself, or at least trying to challenge myself, in the weight room. And I think that's the beauty of it is it pushes you beyond these limitations that we could set for ourselves. And so it's bigger than you in that way. And I think it's also a really, really healthy thing to have, where it's like, you might not know of any solution or know how to push yourself, or you might not know like how to be a great whatever athlete, but then you could have this family that comes together and pushes you to be bigger than these limitations you set for yourself. And I just think it's a wonderful cycle if you let it happen. And it's really hard, and it's hard to be patient. But I think what we didn't even mention yet too is like great leadership, whether it's on the team or I love, like, my favorite thing, I love like a cool old softball coach. Like I love hanging out with them. I want them to like me. I want to like make them laugh. And I think when they set a great example and make a really good structure for a team, it's such a nice thing. And I mean,
I'm
it's
so
a beautiful
thing to hear about too. And I feel like, hearing both of your explanations on how it was and how it is bigger than ourselves, it really sounds like it's something that allows you to have the room to explore, whether that's explore yourself as a player, explore yourself as a teammate, as a leader, maybe in positions as a coach, maybe just even exploring what it's like to be uncomfortable in certain situations. And I think that's such a courageous thing to even put yourself in that situation. Like Gigi, you especially giving yourself the room to explore how you would be in walking onto a team where you don't know anybody, you don't know what's going to happen. These secured spots that have been given to X number of players, you're essentially competing against the entire team, rather than when you're being recruited, it's, you and the coach in that conversation. And so you giving yourself that room to explore your own boundaries and your own limits, and also learning how to push those limits, I think is a fantastic thing. And it seems like it's almost shown up too in your post-school life with how you're kind of invested yourself into different components of sport and sport media and sport business and fitness and wellness all around. What do you think about that? Sorry, this is Kelly. This is a Gigi directed question. We'll get to you.
Yeah. So actually tomorrow, pretty early, I'm going to teach a corporate fitness class. So random, but every Wednesday morning. So, everybody's listening. Let me know if you want to work out. I know all three of us could make you a workout. So like tap into us. We got you. And I was just thinking today, like, I can't wait to be in that room and push these people who are going to go work a full work day, as am I, but whatever. They're going to go put in hours of work, focus on their computers, focus on meetings, whatever it is. And like, I want to just have them push themselves a little bit and like leave feeling like a little bit of a winner when they're done with that workout class. And I think that's just one micro thing, but also later in the day, I'm going to call two different games, one a G League basketball game, and then one a Ivy League softball game at a school I used to want to go to at Columbia University. So I think about that and I'm like, okay, those are three kind of very different things, but what do I want from that? I really want to give a chance for people who are putting in this work. And this is more about the athletes rather than the corporate, but they're putting in this work and there's so many stories that are not being told. It's G League basketball and then it's like Ivy League softball. Not many people talk about those two things. So I want to be so well prepared and well researched, and I want them to feel like I really respect them in the craft that they're working on. And I think for me, I'm still like reshaping my relationship with sports because, it is really hard you go from playing a lot and then you're not playing a lot, but you still have a sweet taste in your mouth because it's like we're winning and I'm around people I love and they motivate me so much. But it's so challenging because you also in yourself have to hold yourself accountable as a walk-on to not let yourself you don't want to let yourself pigeonhole yourself into the role that you're in on that team, like even though I know I was pivotal in the role that I became, like there was times I'd question my worthiness based on playing time, which I don't think I would expect anybody to do ever. So obviously like I'm still reshaping that. And I think that's something that's helpful because like most of my work is in women's sports and I don't want any of these athletes to question why they're doing what they're doing or is anybody watching? Does anybody understand how hard this is? Like, I want to be that person that sees them and then is able to help them kind of tell their story, at least a little bit more and at least just shine a light on what they're doing too. So a lot of times letting them talk for themselves. But yeah, I think there's many ways. I think I'm still figuring out why I'm doing what I'm doing. But the ultimate goal is to just push along girls and women in sports because it helped me so much. It was my safe haven. It got me, it got me a lot of opportunities and it also helped me see myself in a really, really good light at times. But I think there's also a hard part where it's like you see yourself in the best light in sports, but you always will see yourself in the worst light because of the nature of the game. And I think as an adult now, it's like way more obvious that those are lessons when those failures come. But in the moment, you're like, I'm awful at this, but you're not. You're just like in the middle of a lesson and you're growing and they're growing pains.
No, I mean, that's what we're here to do. Like you said in the beginning, we're already getting deep in here. And I mean, if we just take softball as an example, and, we'll branch out to some other sports too, but we'll take softball as an example of that's really a game of failure. Like you're going up to bat and the odds are not in your favor. You're trying to beat that level of failure. And that can be a lot, even working with athletes myself from a sports psych kind of world. That is how we present it, that, you're going up to bat and the odds of you actually succeeding and actually getting to first base or allowing for maybe another runner to advance are fairly slim. Like, how do you continue and how do you maintain that motivation? And I think sport in all components translates off the field so heavily. And everything you just said now, Gigi, is just like kind of echoing that and just bringing that out to the loudspeaker because it's so true. Even if you're able to spread that story to just one additional person through your commentating, or you're able to help one additional person in your group fitness class, which I have a sweet spot for that also as an instructor. So I'll have a class tomorrow morning too. You and I are in there. But even if we're just able to kind of help one extra person kind of feel successful and feel like, you know, they are one step ahead of that certain failure they might have had in their head, that is fantastic. And I think, you know, kind of switching over to your why, I think that's exactly why, you know, at least for me, if I think about it, my why is fueled by everybody else's why, you know? So I hear my people coming into that class tomorrow morning at 6 a.m., bright and early, not even bright, dark and early. And their why is to make themselves feel better. So that's, you know, why am I giving this class? So that you can feel better. Same for sports psych. You know, why am I going to hold these consulting sessions is so that you can develop your confidence. You can develop XYZ or have space to tell your story. And I think with you trying to figure out what your why is in so many different realms, you know, with commentating, with journalism, with reporting, with teaching, I feel like that's all in there, you know?
Thank you. And I loved the sports psychologists. I think we got them at the later half of like our time in college. Man, it's such a good tool. It's such an important tool. And I, off this too, I feel like it would be great to talk to you about what you're doing with that and like what you're learning too, because I think it's a great industry. And honestly, it really doesn't seem like there's enough sports psychologists out there. I don't see a lot,
whole difference.
To be honest.
It's a whole other rabbit hole. But, you know, mental performance consultants versus sports psychologists versus coaches versus whoever. But either way, totally agree. It's all so important. And we can 100% talk about that because I can talk for hours, as Kelly knows, on this topic. But Kelly, do you have any thoughts? What are you thinking over there?
I just love it. I love hearing both of you speak about this because I think you two are probably the best I know when it comes to like the why and what your jobs are. Like, I feel like sometimes I lose that a little bit working in football because it's such a male dominated sport. But I think for me, it's more like, I guess after college, I'll speak to first is like working in football. And you guys know this from any world of sports. We've come a long way, but there's still a lot of work to be done. And that's in terms of, yes, there's not a lot of girls in a lot of these sports professions. There's also not a lot of minorities. So there's still a lot of work to be done, but I feel like there's an element of representation and there's a very talented woman that Gigi and I both know, Ice Young. And it always sticks with me, something that she said to me and Gigi. And that was about pulling as you climb. And it was this kind of concept of, as you advance in your own career, remember the people that helped you and make sure you pay that forward. So if Gigi and I were some of the first females at WFUV Sports, I think it's so cool to see some of the girls that were below us now doing more than we ever could have dreamed of. Cause it's like, you know what? They saw us do that first and that kind of opens up the can of possibilities. Like, it's like, oh, if she's doing that, then I can. And I think that's such a cool thing. And so one thing I think working in the NFL, it's like, I see other girls doing all these cool things on other teams. And I'm like, that's so amazing. Like, I'm sure you guys all know, like, imposter syndrome. It's imposter syndrome is my best friend. It's like my imaginary best friend. Imposter syndrome sits right here with me in everything I do. And I feel like that's something I've really struggled with getting out of sports and not being around girls all the time is being around a lot of guys and having to question, am I supposed to be here? Am I doing the right thing? And so I think seeing other girls do stuff in my same field or similar fields is really empowering. And that's something I want to be able to give back. So I don't know why, but I get a good amount of messages on LinkedIn from girls looking to get into the NFL or into the sports business. I'm sure you guys do too, Gigi, definitely. And I always respond. This is going to sound bad, but like, I don't always respond to the guys, but I will always respond to the girls that message me because I'm like, yes, like, let's get more of you in here, especially if they're a person of color. I just like, let's help out the people whose voices aren't normally amplified, because that's how I felt. I remember I got to beat report for the Knicks with WFU, it was a super cool experience. Ended up helping me learn that that's not really what I wanted to do. I wanted to be more behind the camera. But I remember, I'll never forget this, and I've told this in interviews since, my first time going to a game that wasn't during COVID, when we actually had to go into the post-game presser, I walked in and I was the only girl. And for some reason, I decided it would be cool to wear a pink blazer. It was like literally a scene out of the Barbie. I was wearing a pink blazer and I looked around and it was like 20 guys all wearing like navy blue suits. And I was like, this is like, I remember feeling really like uncomfortable. Like this doesn't feel right. Like it feels like I shouldn't be here. And it was actually Mike Breen, who was a WFUV alum. He's one of the greatest of all time. He's famous for the bang call, calls the NBA finals. He was like, hey, Kelly, like he saw my name tag, didn't actually know my name, but in my head, I thought he knew my name. And he was like, here, and he pulled up a seat next to him and was like, you can sit with me. And that was really cool. And it's kind of like, you know what, like I'm supposed to be here and it's okay. Everything's fine. And I just don't want other girls to have that experience. Not like anything happened to me, but just like there's something unsettling about being in a room where no one else looks like you. And I mean, I think that goes a lot. I think people who are different from me have to deal with that a lot more. But I just think like the more diversity, more people who are different and come from different backgrounds are in these spaces that for so long were dominated by white males. I think nothing, and I have a lot of very supportive and strong and talented white male friends in the industry. But I think for me, it's like my why is really trying to empower the people after me who normally wouldn't think they can do those things. Like I want to help them get there.
For sure. I think, you know, all this to say is, you know, what we're saying on here is not to undermine. We're not, you know, we're just speaking of our own experience. And I think hearing it is so powerful too, because that is uncomfortable. And that is something that is just something that we have to deal with day in and day out. And actually on that reminds me on my, presentation today in the class when I discussed or talked about women in sport broadcasting, Jeannie Morris was somebody who I had looked up and learned about in her history. And she was one of the first female sport broadcasters. And when she had done, I think it was a football game, she was not allowed in the press box. She was not allowed where the men were. So she reported that game on top of the press box outside in a blizzard. Not only that, she did it. Not only that, there was no designated women's bathroom for facilities. So for like sport broadcasters and those employees. So if she wanted to go to the bathroom, she had to use the bathroom that was the spectators' bathroom. So while commentating live in this blizzard football game, I'm you know, correct me if I'm wrong if it's not football out there, but pretty sure it was. She had to, if she wanted to go to the bathroom, she had to go use that spectator's bathroom, come all the way back. And we've been to sporting games. We're all girls. We know how long that line is. Go there, wait, go to the bathroom, come back, continue commentating. And that's just something that she did. And Kelly, that's something that you did. You put 2 feet down and you walked right into that press box or press room afterwards. You know, it's just, we see these things as, okay. You know, like, all right, this is part of it.
Yeah. I would say that's even like there's a few other female coworkers I have at the Panthers, and we talk about going to away games. There's always, you walk right in, and when you're visiting the other team, there's the men's staff locker room, and then you're looking around, and almost every stadium that I went to this year, the women's locker room, which wasn't actually for women, they just put a sign on it, and it would always be like, literally you'd have to walk halfway across the stadium to get to it. And it'd be like, like I know even at the Panther Stadium, like no female showers.
Right.
There's male showers, but no female ones. And it's just like, we've come a long way, but there's still spaces where it's like, definitely not at all. Like, and definitely.
I mean, it's so interesting because for us, obviously it's so obvious, but I mean, there's athletic trainers, there's psychologists, there's nutritionists. Like we have so many different jobs that we take up. You didn't think we had to shower? Like, what do you want us to do? Yeah.
And women will find a way. Like, that's the thing is the fact that she did that in a blizzard, I'm not surprised at all. And I just think for me, I'm learning so much about how many different roles there are out there. And this is something I've been trying to like get out there to women and to current students, to girls. If you want to work in sports, you can make money doing anything you want. Think of like any role possible in sports, a girl could do it. And you know, and I think it's so
sure. Is
this a word? Disalarming? Unalarming? Yeah, like it will like. Thank you. It's disalarming. If I was alarmed by something, even if it's like not an imminent danger, like going into a press conference, but it's all male reporters, there still is like the worries of, ooh, what are they thinking of me? Yada, yada. No matter how you trailblaze, you just keep your head up, whatever, you're still going to be like, ooh, I feel a little bit weird. I think on the broadcast side, you do see a lot of front facing women, but the more and more I see more women behind the scenes too, man, some of the best producers I've ever had are women. And it's a great thing because while the broadcast is happening, the whole production team is talking. And so if you ever are listening in on their conversations, sometimes I'm literally worried where they're going to go as a woman. I literally don't know where they're going to go. So if there's another woman on that call, which is through headphones, nobody knows what they're saying. It's not recorded, anything. It's just a little piece of accountability. And I think like as those things start to come more in, like, yeah, of course, I love working with men. I think it's a great thing. It's a cool dynamic. And like we balance each other out. I love working with women though. And I just think we think about things a little bit more in depth and it's not even hating on men. It's just like, I know there's a lack of it. Even if there is increase in representation in coaching, in production, in on camera, in playing, in whatever, athletic training, sports psychology, there's an increase, more women doing it. We are still at that point of like, this is our blizzard now that we're sitting in. And there's a lot of work that needs to be done. And I think the more that we continue to like put it out there that there's options, the better it's going to be for everybody, because it's going to be like, oh wait, this is so fun. Like, this is just the girls talking and like, we're making something that we would want to then consume. Like it's not just going to be men making things for consumption or doing playing the sports that we're consuming. It's like, this is now a female lens producing this too, which is an amazing thing that I honestly think that's one area that we would benefit from a lot of growth. And the Big East Conference actually did their second all-female broadcast 2 years in a row. So that means everybody down, literally the only male on payroll that day was the driver of the truck that had all the equipment. It just so happened. And if they needed a female driver, I got you, Big East. Like I could do that. But seriously, like the broadcast staff, production crew, everybody was a woman. And I just like, they had to like outsource to go get those people to come to one Big East Conference game. That doesn't need to happen anymore, I don't think. Like, I think we have that, but I think it's just letting people know how accessible it is.
Yeah,
is our
100%.
Next step.
I think, again, I've said this so many times in this podcast, but I agree with every word that you have just said. And I think that piece of accountability is so important because it really just takes one person, it takes one person for us to talk to and for us to hold accountable that this is something that, we deserve, and we have to hold this kind of guideline of how we want our working environment to be. And I think that is an area for growth and an area for change. And then the flip side of it too is what you're talking about consumerism as a pattern and as a whole. And from, that marketing perspective, there's such a huge untapped population of women in sport that, just hasn't been given the time of day to be advertised towards, or to have sports kind of directed in their viewing capacity or in ways that might be more entertaining for women to watch all over the world, all over this country. And when we see that happen, there are incredible things that go on, like with Caitlin Clark, for example, breaking the record for, I think it was like 4 point some million viewers were there or watched around the world, or around this country at least. That's huge. And when we create that space and when we're allowed to be creative and kind of flourish in what we want to do, like that's, people are proving all over the place. And this is my soapbox, even though I said I'd let you guys talk, but people are proving time and time again that, yeah, you put the time and you put the effort into women's sports, people are going to show up. It's like that Field of Dreams quote. Like if you build it, they'll come. You just got to build it, Yeah, it's crazy. But I think, any thoughts on that before I hop on to another question?
A billion thoughts. Like, I just think that there's so many moments this past year where like Nebraska volleyball set a record, right? Like 93,003 fans in the stadium. More people are being aware of it. And I think that's a great thing. And also, I think it's also highlighting how many people have been there. Like there is a lot of fans. Even Fordham softball is a mid-major school. We don't charge for tickets. We would still get fans at our games. It wasn't as many as we probably deserve. We put out a great show, but that being said, like there are people who are committed to it in a way where I'm watching a sporting event and I'm not watching a niche thing where it's like, oh, I love Caitlin Clark. I love watching her play. And I think like there's this whole dichotomy with her this year where it's like a lot of people are coming in because of her, but then a lot of people who have been here are like, oh, now you guys get it. Like now you want a little piece of it because she's a sharpshooter from the logo. Like she's a great shooter. She's a phenomenal talent, but it's going to be sustained after her too. And I think that's an amazing thing, like where we're celebrating her and then also being like, okay, we had someone be able to package something nicely for a mass segment of the population and push women's sports forward. And yeah, I could talk about that. That's the thing I could talk about for hours too. If sports psychology is yours. Yeah.
Yeah. That's definitely like a Roman Empire. I feel like for women in sports, it's just like, if you guys freaking put it on TV, people are going to watch it. Like I know, Kristen Ledlow, she works for Inside the NBA, has a podcast with Candace Parker. And I remember talking to her about that and how her and Candace started their podcast because she's like, listen, like the market's there, the numbers are there. When they presented it to TNT, all the research showed that they already had the people wanting to watch it. They had the fans, there's a market value. They had all their KPIs in line, but it was just people are just so hesitant to trust women. Like just to, literally, I think it comes down to that. Like they just don't trust girls to be able to bring that revenue in. And it's like, look at all the examples. I think Caitlin Clark and even Sabrina Ionescu is before her was like another superstar standout with the NBA All-Star thing with Steph Curry this year. I think those are two examples, but like there's examples before that. The women's national soccer team, softball, college softball, every year since like 2012 has gotten more views than the baseball World Series. And it's like, yeah, because ESPN finally decided to put it on TV. And then like Gigi, I'm sure yours experiences, like I would be wearing a Fordham softball shirt in the gym at my hometown. And a guy would be like, oh, I was watching LSU on TV, like LSU softball on TV. I had a guy ask me one time if I was Kelly Barnhill. I am absolutely not Kelly Barnhill, but the fact that some random dude thought I was the Gators, like All-American pitcher, but he knew her name. I was like, yeah, because ESPN put it on TV. So
oh my gosh,
I think we could all talk about this for so long, but I do think on a positive note, I think this year has been great for that. And I'm hoping that executives and the people who have the power to make those big decisions are seeing this, learn from it, and then add to it next year.
I think there's so many ways where I'm still experiencing people who are doubting the fact that it's profitable and marketable. And I am shocked at times when I have to like explain it to people how it works and explain to people how to pronounce people's names or like explain to people things that have become like very basic facts to me. And I'm cool with doing it. I'm cool with explaining it. And I will continue to. I just think it's crazy how much people don't trust it yet. And I just think all I'm looking to do is just like keep on pushing forward and put out like an exceptional product. Like that's all I want to do. And And I think about one of the big headlines this year with women's college basketball was their deal with the new NCAA president, Charlie Baker. He's like a former congressman too, out of Massachusetts. Interesting fact. But he basically got this company Endeavor as like an advisor to see what they should do about the women's March Madness tournament moving forward. And another theme that I'm seeing that this highlights is if you pay women to what they deserve, that's going to solve a lot of issues, because that still doesn't happen. I think I am currently being underpaid, and I'm not like even looking into it, but I'm just like, there's no way this is like really how it works. Like I'm just clocking it and noticing it for now. But basically the NCAA will pay the conferences of men's teams who make it to certain rounds of the tournament. They're called units. They'll get paid units. So basically, the better your conference does, the more teams you have enter whatever round. I don't know if it's a round of 64 or what, but you'll bring home money for your conference, and a rising tide raises all ships, they say. So like the more money the conference has the more money to be allocated across sports. But the women's March Madness tournament, 1.1 million viewers for a semifinal game the other night with Iowa. Like, a lot of people are watching it. We're not even at the Sweet 16. We're not at the Final Four yet. They don't get paid the units, and they won't until it's renegotiated. If a person who is a great advisor renegotiates it. So I think that's something that I'm looking forward to too, is like NIL is getting more money in the hands of female athletes, which is great. And they're giving them a platform to share their story through whatever company that they're partnering it with, whatever. But also, like, that's just one little simple thing that I think could be fixed and could be super beneficial and like highlight even more. Oh, this actually could be a revenue generating sport. We're not giving it enough to be revenue generating. So that's another thing to keep a little tab on, even though it's good out here as a female in
absolutely.
sports.
I think it's so easy to say,
there's a lot of work.
Like, we have it so much better compared to even 10, 15 years ago. But at the same time, like, we're not there yet. I mean, even this is really good timing that I did my presentation today, because I just am spitting out all these stats like I would know them otherwise. But in the last 5 years, if we're talking about coverage of women's sports, the coverage has tripled. Do either of you know that stat off the top of your head of what percentage of women's sport? Yeah. Tripled. 15. That means it was 5% of all coverage 5 years ago. That is just insane to me. And that's something that, to an extent, very unfortunately, we are left to celebrate. Like, it is fantastic. I'm so glad that it is 15 and not 5 or not 12 or not 7, but it's 15%. That means what? 85% of sport coverage is men's sports. And yet we see, like you were talking about with the women's semifinals basketball game, 1 million viewers. Coco Gauff's U.S. Open win a couple years, or I think it was last year, had 3.5 million viewers or something like that. And the men's finals had 2.3. And yet it's still 15%. Like, that is just... I mean, again, we can all go on and on and on about this, but kind of reaching towards the end of our time together here, I want to spin that to kind of a more positive light of, you both have made it to where you are now and are continuing to grow and find different experiences. We've touched on it a little bit, but what are some main points? Let's say 2 main things if you could give advice to either your younger self or to girls wanting to tap into this, whether it's being an athlete or working in the sports world or even just sport adjacent. So you can take a second to think about it. We'll say 2 each just so that we can, I know we can go on and on and on about this, but.
I have a lesson I learned this weekend. I reached out to a former teammate. Kelly's going to be jealous that I talked to her. Chelsea Skrepanak. Yep. She was a senior when I was.
Skrepanak.
Shout out Chelsea Scrub. I'm gonna send her this. And she was a former teammate. She was a senior when I was a freshman. Cool dude. Just carried herself like a baller. I loved it. And I reached out to her and it was a great conversation. I just felt like I needed that like female leadership, that badass example of like, I am a winner and I'm going to show up as that. And you can't take that from me. And if you try, like, I'm going to be like, Chelsea was a dog, basically. Like, she was so cool. So that lesson, I was like, I'm asking for help right now. Like, this is actively me asking for help. That's something I continue to challenge myself to do. And that's advice I'm going to give myself right now. And I would give my younger self that. I would give anybody that advice. And that's something I always do with Kelly. And then the second thing is, I have it tatted on me. I don't know if many people know that. Godati. It's Italian. It means enjoy yourself. I think that's the biggest thing about sports and like about life in general. Like, to be honest, you guys know this, like, it's all bigger than this. And really at the end of the day, does any of this matter? Like, let's just enjoy ourselves. We have one go around on this planet. And like, did we think we'd end this podcast on this? No, we have one go around. Like, let's just have fun. And especially as women, I think like to be truly liberated and to be free is to be present and to be having fun, with whatever we're doing, even if that's a struggle right now. Like, find a way to find your joy and enjoy yourself in whatever you're doing, and ask for help if you need it. And you always need it. I always need it more than I realize.
It's really hard to follow.
I know, mic drop. The end. Thanks for listening.
We should have ended with Gigi. I knew we should.
No, we got to hear from you, Kelly.
But I'll start with my one that's a little bit more logistical. And I think that's something that the female mentors that I've always looked to have told me. And that's to say yes, just in general, say yes to things. And that's in terms of like, we talked about at the beginning of this podcast, being uncomfortable, being okay, being comfortable, being uncomfortable. I think it can be really scary to get into working in sports, or even like Gigi walking onto a team, or just doing things that are outside our comfort zone. And so I think saying yes when those opportunities arise, and being okay with making mistakes and just saying yes to it anyways. I think in terms of career, or even your athletic career or whatever, I think that really opens doors for you. And it's okay if you make mistakes on those opportunities, but as long as you gave it a shot. So that would be my first thing to say yes. And then the second one is something we didn't really talk about, but I think this is something that I've really learned in the past 3 to 4 years. So really at the end of my softball career, but not the end of my life. So, and that's this idea that being strong is beautiful. And I think you can look at the term strong as a physical thing and a mental thing, and really like a spiritual thing. I think as girls, especially since this is Women's History Month, we are told by the media, by society, by sometimes even people in our own family, that as women, we're supposed to be small, that we aren't supposed to take up space. We're not supposed to be loud. And we are supposed to be just, yes men, almost like, and I just feel like there's so much around us telling us to not be strong, to be weak. And like, that's what's going to get us far. That's what men want. That's what other girls aspire to be. And I think that it couldn't be further from the truth. And I think being around other strong females has given me more self-confidence than I could have ever imagined. I think that's why I love weightlifting so much. And I think that's why I love playing sports. It's because it really celebrates girls being strong, taking up space, lifting heavy things, doing hard things, really showcasing what you are, who you are, all the things that you worked for. I think that is a great way to work on self-confidence, is to not focus on being thin or being pretty or being but just being strong and taking that beyond just the weight room or it doesn't matter how many push-ups you can do, but it's like, be okay taking up space, being loud and having confidence. I think that'll take you so far. And on days when I'm feeling a little bit self-conscious or I don't know, just not myself, I try and really focus on whether it's, hey, like, I'm a strong ass woman. Like we just talked about Chelsea. She's a badass bitch. Like, she is fucking strong. And that's not just because she squatted more than I've ever seen a girl squat in my life, which is true. But it is just like that mental toughness, that confidence. I think we all, like the women that we look up to, I think we looked up to them because they have that strength to them. And I think, like, if I could go back to little me, like, that's the first thing.
I love all of that. Another mic drop. And I'm going to challenge myself to give 2 as well, because I got to talk the talk, not just walk the walk. But I think, Gigi, I think it's so funny that we met through Kelly, because it's such a fun, whenever you have a really close friend of another really close friend, there's going to be a connection of some reason. And so I have one of mine tattooed on me that I just got recently, which is so fun. And it's be afraid and do it anyway. I have it on my inner bicep. And I think that would be one of them that I would give, is that be afraid and do it anyway, and it kind of aligns with what we've talked about here in both of your 2 points. And, you're not going to get anywhere if you're taking that fear and letting it control you, so that's, I think, one piece of advice that I would give is, okay, and, yeah, this is scary. And yeah, it's uncomfortable to be in that press box with just men. And okay, yeah, it's uncomfortable to have to go on a walk-on team where you don't know what the outcome is going to be. All right, and I think challenging that and taking that and with you and being afraid and doing it anyway. And then I think the second part of this is really tapping into your creativity and not being afraid to learn about what you like to do and using that creativity, whatever it looks like. We're seeing all these different things of like, oh, don't post too much on social media. Oh, you need to be posting on social media. Why is she doing a YouTube video? Why is she doing this, this, and this? But, if that's what's true to you and if that's what's based with your identity, I think be creative. So we've got a whole list of 6 things to fuel the next generation. Maybe even, I'm going to take what you guys said and fuel myself with it. But, yeah. I think one last thing before we close ship here. One thing we like to ask at the end of this podcast, and by we, I mean Nick and Mike, but I'm taking the credit for it for now, is in what way are we going to take what we have talked about here? And this is a question for me as well. In what way are we going to take what we talked about here? We've got a few days left in March in Women's History Month. How are we going to challenge ourselves to be 1% better every day? We've got a few days left. What's that going to look like for each of us?
All right, I'll go. No, you go. No. Kelly. It would be my honor to follow you up. Please go.
Here we go again.
Please.
I think there's 2 things I'm going to take away from this. One, I think Gigi said she reached out to Scrap. I think reaching out to some of the women in your life who have really made an impact, I think can go a long way. Like whether they're mentors, whether they're teammates or friends, I think this is a month to celebrate women and all these great things we talked about. I think you see them in some of the closest people in your life and the people you love. Like I'm looking at 2 of my best friends right now and all the stuff that we talked about applies so much to you. So I think reaching out to other powerful women in my life, other strong, awesome women, just telling them I see them and how appreciative I am of them and, just giving them that little pick me up. I think that's something I can do. And then the other thing is at work right now, it's kind of stressful. We're going through free agency and it can be a little tough being the only girl in the room. So I kind of have to listen to my advice, listen to Ruhi's be afraid, but do it anyway thing. Gigi's thing about, enjoy it. And I think when things get stressful and I feel like I don't have a voice, I think I need to speak up and I need to, remember that I am there for a reason and that I have valid opinions and to just share them without fear. So I think those are my 2 things.
I love that. I learned so much from this. I love the little action item to end it too. Because right before you asked that, I was like, I can't wait to just sit and ponder what my girls just said. Seriously, because that just hit. I think for me, I'm going to be in a new, although I've been both these places tomorrow, I'm going to be in a relatively new atmosphere with a role. And the imposter syndrome kicks in a little bit with that. And I think for me, even before we started, I was like, okay, tomorrow I'm just going to go and I'm going to be on my game. I think tomorrow I'm just going to think of what you guys both just said and not be, I'm actually so afraid. And that's what people don't really realize about talk. I know some people ask oh, do you get stage fright or whatever? Yeah, right. Girl. But I forget about it once we start. But so I think tomorrow I'm just going to really let myself forget about it. Cause the last basketball game I did, I was it was like the third quarter and I'm like still afraid. Girl, what? The game is almost done. Don't be afraid. So I think, yeah, that's going to be my thing. And then also this weekend, I'm going to be around family and around like my nieces and stuff. So I just always try and not just say like, oh, you're so pretty to them, but like, I also am like, oh my God, you're so strong. Wait, can we race? You're so fast. Like kind of like planting a little seed in their brain. So I'm going to keep doing that. And I'm honestly just going to think about you two both and how much of an impact you've both had. Even Ruhi, you don't even know. Like, I feel like you've impacted me a lot. And I want to really keep that in as a part of myself because, I think you both have reminded me over and over of like, of so many things. And yeah, there's so many action items that could come from that. But I think, I'm also just so happy we're doing this. Like this feels so right. I had no idea what we're going to talk about. So this is like a very happy surprise.
You know, another time I say it, but I'll agree with, you know, everything each of you have said just now. And I think those are fantastic action items. I like that phrase. I think for myself, if I were to reflect, I'm currently 39 days until graduation and then I'm out of Tallahassee. Sorry, Nat, but I'm leaving you. So I can't wait. But right, because of that, I'm in the job market and I'm in the what the heck am I doing with my life now that I have a master's degree phase. And I think I need to take what you were talking about, Kelly, of being comfortable with the uncomfortable, because I hate putting myself out there like that. Like I hate the networking. I hate, you know, I love talking to people and I love having these kind of conversations. But that's because I know that it's no stakes. You know, it's my girls. I'm talking about what we all love. It's not talking to somebody who might potentially hire me. And so I think I need to embrace that, be comfortable with the uncomfortable. And then what you were talking about, Gigi, of you know, enjoy it. Just this, I'm in this process once. I'm in this post-grad mindset once. Sure, if I continue on to school, I'll be in there again, but that'll even be a little bit different than how I am now. So taking this experience for how it is and, you know, rolling with it, just allowing myself to really enjoy it, and whatever is meant to be will be. I have that little poster. All that is meant to be will find its way to be above my bed. And I think I just need to remind myself of that. And like you said, Gigi, I'm going to be pondering a lot about this conversation, and I feel like we could go on and on and on for hours, but for the time being today, I wish I could give you both a little squeeze, but just share my love and my energy to each of you for saying yes and agreeing and supporting me in this episode. If our lovely viewers and listeners want to reach either of you or follow what you're doing, where can they find you? A little plug moment.
Oh my God. Okay. A little plug moment. Instagram and Twitter. Oh my God, is my Instagram? Kelly.
It's been 87 for as long as I've known you.
I think that's right.
Yeah, right.
It stands for Kansas City.
It does not. No, let's leave that. 87 is for Gronkowski, by the way. But I also do the Panthers YouTube. So if you see any videos,
we've got a regional Emmy winner in the house. I can't believe I didn't even start with that. BT Dubs. Yeah, hey, it's got the word Emmy in there. That's all I care about. Yeah, I saw it. I held the thing. It was great. But awesome. I know.
My girl's an Emmy winner. Wait, are you still going, Kel?
Oh, that's it.
You want to plug your Twitter? Okay.
He's got like 100 places to find her, so.
Kelly does have a great Twitter though, so I would do some deep dives and find that. For me, you can look up my name, Gigi, Gigi, Spear, Speer, and enjoy whatever you see. And on Twitter, it's Gigi_Spear. And then if you want women's basketball coverage, right now it's March Madness. Head over to the Next Hoops on Instagram, Twitter. Listen to Locked On Women's Basketball. I host every other Thursday. We have 100,000 listeners. We'd love for you to be another one. And a whole bunch of other places too, but those are the two I'll do for now. And Kelly actually helped me out with a video that I'll be putting out later this week. So you can find me on Gigi Spear YouTube, and you can see another Kelly Bright edited original that I did with an MLB draft prospect.
Yeah, I love it. So many exciting things to watch out for. Well, again, I appreciate both of you to the end of time. You don't even know. Thank you for joining. Everybody out there listening, we've got a big virtual round of applause, I guess, for our two girls here. And with that, happy Women's History Month. Thank you, Nick and Mike, for letting me take the reins for today. We got to show them that this episode has the most views and listens compared to theirs, just for spite. But with all of that, I hope you guys have a fantastic rest of your night, your evening, your week. And we'll see you so soon.